What is going on, everyone? Jason here, and today we're doing an epic comparison of no doubt two of the most popular devices of 2020. The much anticipated iPhone 12 and the newly designed Google Pixel 5. Now both of these phones are interesting as each have gone through somewhat of an overhaul from last year, and more importantly, these two smartphones sit at the top of the relatively new middle of the market segment that is likely the most appealing to majority of consumers. Now you might be on the fence of which phone to go with this year, so today I want to compare some of the key features between the iPhone 12 and the Pixel 5 to help you decide which phone is better for you. Now before we jump into this review, if you're new here, I'm basically the guy who tests out the newest and most popular tech out there before you buy them to make sure that you're informed and don't make any purchasing mistakes. That said, would really appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up, it really helps me out. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all the coolest tech devices and toys, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything. And quick question for you guys before I get into all this, which phone do you prefer? The iPhone 12 or the Pixel 5? Curious to see which phone gets more love. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. Okay, first let's talk about the physical design of these phones, and it doesn't take long to see that they're quite different. Let's start with the iPhone 12. Apple implemented a more classic design approach with this phone, using glass on both the front and back, connected together using an aluminum body. Now that might sound pretty vanilla, but the iPhone 12 uses Apple's new industrial design with that beautifully machined flat frame, and like all Apple devices, the build quality here is top tier. The glass seamlessly melts into the metal frame, there's no gap whatsoever, and really without exaggeration, this is one of the most premium feeling phones in the hand. And despite it being a fingerprint magnet, there's no question that the iPhone 12 is absolutely stunning. It's also really comfortable to use with the smaller form factor, which is a welcome change of pace from phones inching towards tablet territory. Now Google also went a similar direction with the dimensions on the Pixel 5, making it much more accommodating for one-handed use, and solidifying it as one of the most comfortable Pixels ever made. It's much less cumbersome to hold and operate, and it's clear that Google is doubling down on its utility-first approach with the Pixel lineup. This is most aptly illustrated with the phone's build material. The Pixel 5's unibody design is made out of 100% recycled aluminum, deviating away from using any glass this year. Plus, the aluminum has a coating on it that gives it a rather dull matte finish all the way around, great for repelling micro scratches and fingerprints, but it doesn't exactly feel like your stereotypical premium device. It's definitely not going to win any beauty pageants anytime soon, but what you get in return is an all-utility type rugged phone that you don't have to baby around. The Pixel 5 is the one phone this year where I felt totally comfortable using it without a case, and in turn it made it the phone that I most often grab when going on a hike or any other outdoor activity. It's a totally different vibe when comparing it to something as pristine as the iPhone 12, and in a way it's very refreshing. At the end of the day, the design is going to come down to preference when determining which one is right for you. Without question, the iPhone 12 is the more premium and higher quality when it comes to build. And I should also note that I've had a ton of people reach out to me on Twitter and YouTube saying that their Pixel 5 has a noticeable gap between the frame and the glass. Mine doesn't have that issue, but you will never see that on an iPhone. Apple holds itself to the highest standards when it comes to build quality, something Google may not have mastered yet. But if you're looking for a phone that you could throw in and out of a bag without feeling anxious all the time of getting little nicks and scratches, the Pixel 5 is a great option. And one of the main reasons why the smaller dimensions for both of these phones work so well is because of their respective displays. In order to ensure that you still get an immersive user experience, both Apple and Google equip their phones with edge-to-edge displays, and both are pretty fantastic. They're both OLED panels with roughly the same dimensions and comparable resolutions, and viewing content on either phone is a really pleasing experience. Everything comes off sharp, colors are bright and vibrant, you get great contrast with those dark inky blacks, and both have really good screen-to-body ratios. Now the Pixel 5 inches a bit ahead of the iPhone 12 here, primarily for two reasons. Number one, because it only has a single hole punch cutout for the front-facing camera, the display is more immersive and notch-free, making for less interrupted content consumption. More importantly, the display has a 90Hz variable refresh rate, which does help provide a smoother, silkier user experience when navigating around the phone. Now iPhones have always been well optimized, and their standard 60Hz refresh rate is still very smooth and never posed any issues, but the lack of a ProMotion type display is something that needs to be noted as this is a comparison. Now when it comes to other core features, it's a mixed bag of similarities and minor differences. To start, while the Pixel 5 uses its older fingerprint sensor on the back of the phone as its biometric security measure, the iPhone 12 uses its in-house Face ID system. There's definitely pros and cons for both. For the Pixel, it's an older technology, but because the sensor is on the back, you get a better screen-to-body ratio on the display. Face ID, on the other hand, is way more advanced, and in my opinion, a more convenient security measure, but you do pay for it with that notch at the top of the display. When it comes to base storage, the Pixel 5 comes standard with 128GB, whereas the iPhone 12's base model comes in with a pretty paltry 64. When it comes to speakers, however, though both provide stereo sound, the Pixel 5 has an embedded speaker within the display that's kinda crappy, especially when compared to the loud, balanced sound coming out of the iPhone 12. Both phones can take advantage of wireless charging, and when it comes to battery life, both phones do pretty well. You could easily get around 7 hours of screen on time, and both phones perform great even with some aggressive testing. Now I'll go ahead and recognize the Pixel 5 here because it's seen such a big improvement in battery life from last year, and it's really impressive how good the battery life is on this phone, even with the relatively compact form factor and advanced hardware like the higher refresh rate display. But likely the most notable difference between these two phones is gonna be their processors. One of the most controversial decisions Google made with the Pixel 5 was to equip it with the Snapdragon 765G processor, a strong but clear mid-tier processor when compared to Snapdragon's 800 series. And honestly, I have yet to experience any significant performance issues during my day-to-day use. There's no noticeable lags or hiccups, even when doing some spec-intensive gaming. The only areas so far where you see performance stutters are with the camera. It takes a good few seconds for photos to process after the shutter is hit, as the Pixel 5 does not have a dedicated processor for image processing anymore. It'll probably be a non-issue for most, but it is representative of perhaps some of the limitations around the 765G. Apple, on the other hand, has packed the iPhone 12 with their newest A14 Bionic processor, quite possibly the most powerful chip available in today's consumer smartphone market. And as you'd expect, the performance on this phone is pretty incredible. Now, iOS has been so well optimized for so long now, you're going to continue to get that smooth UI experience that we've all come to love and expect. And of course, things like gaming on this phone is a piece of cake, even for extended sessions. And I would say the biggest flexing of the A14 Bionic's muscles is in its ability to handle the iPhone's intense camera features. Most people don't recognize the sheer horsepower it takes for this phone to use complex software enhancements like next generation Smart HDR and portrait mode while getting a live preview in the viewfinder of everything going on, and only taking seconds for the data to process. And not only do the images render instantly, the quality of the pictures coming out of both the front and back camera are fantastic. Selfies are sharp with bright, accurate colors, Apple continues to do the best with skin tones, and they don't overdo it with portrait mode artificial enhancements. Now the Pixel 5 is no slouch either in the camera department, and the selfies coming out of this phone are also exemplary. They have a cooler temperature, great contrast, and a really eye-pleasing color profile. When compared head to head, I do tend to prefer the selfies coming out of the iPhone just a tad more. They're more natural and not as artificially enhanced, and I like Apple's colors here just a little bit better. But it really comes down to preference. Both of these phones put out some of the best selfies on any camera right now. However, when it comes to front-facing video, the iPhone 12 comes out way ahead. Everything from the colors to the dynamic range is way better when compared to the Pixel 5, and being able to shoot 4K video in 24, 30, or 60 frames per second really allows for more versatility if you do a lot of front-facing video in your day-to-day. Now when it comes to the cameras on the rear, again, both do an outstanding job. The iPhone and the Pixel have been battling it out to determine which is the best phone for photos for a couple years now, and they're still neck and neck. The Pixel 5 to me does a little bit better with dynamic range, and it balances out the shadows a bit more than the iPhone 12. Again, it's really going to come down to preference, but I still feel that the Pixel generates photos that most are going to be very satisfied with in almost any shooting environment. Virtually every time you press the shutter on this phone, you're going to be happy. But once again, when it comes to video, the iPhone 12 takes a huge leap forward. Apple went pretty extra this year as the new iPhones can shoot 4K video in 10-bit Dolby Vision HDR, allowing this phone to get, without dispute, the greatest smartphone video footage, period. The colors and dynamic range are so impressive, and again, this is really where the A14 Bionic is earning its paycheck. The amount of data this phone is capturing to get this type of video is far more comprehensive than what it seems. And although the 4K video footage coming out of the Pixel 5 is okay, it's not nearly at the same level as its still photography capability, and clearly behind the iPhone here. So even though a lot of this will come down to preference, the iPhone 12 in my opinion is the more complete package when it comes to cameras, and it's a no-brainer if you're primarily into video. Now with the Pixel 5 being $100 cheaper, it definitely helps bridge any small gaps in which the phone might be slightly behind, and man, it's a really tough call to say which one is quote-unquote better. No doubt the Pixel 5 is the most refined phone Google has ever made, and I feel as though it's made way more improvements from last year, and I can totally understand why it's so popular. Now the iPhone 12 may not have made as many on-the-nose changes from the year prior, but it definitely did in key areas that count, and it's probably going to go down as the most polished and appealing option for those shopping at this price point. Ultimately, the good news is that it's going to be hard to be disappointed if these are your two choices, so at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to your preferences and really what type of user you are. Okay, that's about it for this comparison review. Don't forget to leave me a thumbs up if you guys found it useful. Again, I'd really appreciate it. Check out these dedicated reviews of both the Pixel 5 and the iPhone 12 if you want more information. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.